When given a graph and you are asked to find the domain and range, it is asking you to find the intervals in which the graph exists in relation to the x-axis and the y-axis. So more simply put, the domain are the valid x values and the range are the valid y values. Again, remember, since it's an interval notation, it always goes from smallest to largest. So the domain always runs from left to right, whereas the range runs from bottom to top. So let's look at the first one. We have this graph here, and we need to find the domain and range. So the domain, again, are the x values. And so we look here to the leftmost part of this graph, which is this part, and the leftmost x value here is -3. And since it's a closed circle, we're going to say it's a bracket. Again, this value here is -3, so bracket -3. And we follow this along and we see that it's continuous. There's no gaps, there's no jumps, there's nothing. It just keeps on going uninterrupted until it gets to this point, its end point. In this case, at 6. And again, it's a closed circle at 6, so we say 6 bracket. So the domain of this graph here runs from -3 to +6 along the x-axis. Now the range is just the y values. So again, we said before, the range runs from bottom to top. So we look for the lowest point on this graph, and we see that it is right here. And we want the lowest point in relation to the y-axis. So what is the y value here? In this case, it's a -2. And this graph is touching -2. So since it's touching it, it's a bracket. And then we look to see what the highest point is. When we see it goes all the way up to 2 over here and 2 over here, which is fine. It can do it multiple times. We just need to know what the highest point is. In this case, it's a 2. And since it's touching it, with circles filled in as well, say it's a bracket. So the range is -2 to +2, and the domain is -3 to +6. Here we have this function. Kind of looks weird, but it's okay. So we're going to find the domain. So we're looking at this and I see that the leftmost x value here is over at -1. So it's -1, but it's an open circle instead of a filled in circle. So that means this gets a parentheses. And then as we follow it along, it goes down, it goes up, then it goes back down again. No gaps, no jumps, nothing to break it apart. And while you can't see it here, you can assume that this goes down and to the right forever. But we're not too concerned with it going down forever as it's going to the right forever. And since it's going right forever, even if it's just at a slight angle, it's still heading towards positive infinity, which always gets a parentheses. So we know the domain, so now we're going to do the range. So again, we want the lowest value, and we see that this is going down forever, which means on the y-axis that is -infinity. And as we look at it, it's going up, goes back down, but we're still just worried about how high it goes. And this is as high as it goes, which is 2 on the y-axis. And again, it's an open circle, so it also gets a parentheses. So the domain runs from -1 to infinity, and the range runs from -infinity to 2. And here we have this weird looking function. So we need the domain again, and we need the range. So we look at the leftmost x value, and again, you can't tell here, but this is going off that way forever and that way forever. So this is going to the left and up forever. So we know that the leftmost value would be negative infinity. Now as we follow along, it keeps on going, it bounces, it jumps, but it never, there's no gaps, there's no holes, it just keeps going this way until it goes on to the right and up forever. And the right and up forever is just positive infinity because it's just going to the right forever. That's all we're concerned with. So now for the range, we need its lowest point. And its lowest point is here and here. Both cases it is -2. So, because it's touching -2 on both of them, it gets a bracket. Now we need its highest point, and it goes up to +2, which is true, but on both sides it continues going up way past +2. In fact, it goes up forever. In that case, up forever on the y-axis is positive infinity. And again, infinity always gets a parentheses. So the domain of this function goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, left and right, and the range goes from -2 to infinity on the y-axis.